When you work with a child, three things. First thing is making problem behaviors, teach the replacement behavior immediately, and place problem behavior in extinction. Those are the three things you got to do for every single student, every single classroom problem behaviors, and create a classroom system-wide that students are contacting reinforcement frequently and often. The first thing I would always say is this for collaboration is,
All right, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Science, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of applied behavior analysis. I'm your host, Jerron Trotman, and as always, I'm joined by my fantastic co-hosts,
Joseph Adams,
Darius Cooper.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a special guest with us, the one and only Dr. Bruce Tinor, the Vice President of Black Men in Behavior Analysis, also known as BMBA. As an accomplished educational professional, Dr. Tinor currently serves as a principal at the Career and Child Development Center with the Chester County Intermediate Unit 24 in Pennsylvania, where he focuses on empowering students with autism, behavioral emotional disorders, and intellectual disabilities. Let's welcome Dr. Tinor to the show, y'all.
thank you, brother. Appreciate being here. Thank you for the invite. I'm down here in Atlanta, Georgia. Obviously, Atlanta's a beautiful city, so thank you.
The locals gonna get him for saying Hotlanta, though, right? We don't say Hotlanta.
No, we don't say that no more, bro.
No more.
That's a little John.
I apologize.
We passed that.
You know what? My first time down here, so I apologize.
Nah, you good, man.
Beautiful city, though, by the way.
Beautiful city.
It's a beautiful city.
Coming to you live from our studios here in Atlanta. We're actually in the middle of the WEBA conference, Women in Behavior Analysis. So we are actually having a great time. Actually, Dr. Bruce Tinor is actually on a board for WEBA. So he's out here giving us some time while we're at the conference. So we appreciate that, brother.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm part of the advisory board in regards to the DEI committee. So it's been a wonderful opportunity just to connect, and we're here, so it's great.
And let me jump in for a second because we both from New York, right?
Yes.
Harlem. So I'm on your side. They tried to attack him just now about the Hotlanta thing. But
Yeah.
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. Don't let them do that. Don't let them do that.
But we wanted to kind of jump into your background and career. So can you share a little bit with us about how your career began? From special education, what motivated you to enter the field?
Sure. Well, originally I went to school. I really wanted to go into law enforcement to be a detective. But when I was in school, I played football. And one of my professors who coached, he was talking to me and he was kind of inspiring. He was a great professor. And then as I was ready to graduate, he goes, "Hey, you should be a teacher." I'm like, "I ain't being no teacher. I'm not working with kids." I mean, I love kids, but I was like, "Nah, just be in law enforcement and maybe I'll be an FBI agent or detective." And he's like, "No." He said something to me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to," he's giving me the perks about being a teacher. He goes, "Do you want to work with people in the front end or catch them in the back end?" And I was just like, yeah, I could see that. So then I kind of ventured. I took a couple of classes in college in regards to education, and I loved it. So then I went back, kind of took some more education classes, and then I went into early childhood special education. So from there, when I graduated, I was a teacher. I taught for over 10 years. I taught early childhood students at the preschool level in New Jersey for 10 years. And also I did a little bit of middle school, but the majority of my teaching career was in elementary special education. So when I did that, I love being a teacher. I just loved the autonomy I had in my classroom, the impact I was having on the students. I was going from a master's in special education. And one of my professors was like, "Hey, you should go for leadership." I'm like, "No, I don't want to be, I could see myself being a maybe elementary principal, but I really don't want to be a principal." So I spent a lot of time in the principal's office, so it's kind of aversive to me. So I was like, "Nah." I said, "I'm good." I said, "I don't want to be, I'm good at being a teacher." But I did take a class. It was a leadership course, and it was great. I just said, "You know what?" And he told me, "You should just take it. If you never become an administrator, it's okay, but at least you have the certificate, so you're certified." I'm like, "All right, that sounds right." Just in case, in the back pocket. It wasn't until I completed my course towards the tail end. You have to do internship, and you have your hours, 360 hours you have to do, and you have to sit with the superintendent or principal. So my school in New Jersey was a smaller school district, so I had an opportunity to sit for a year and just being a teacher, but also having opportunities for responsibilities for like Section 504 coordinator. I was sitting in meetings, running meetings. If the superintendent or the principal's out, I would help support cover. And the exposure to like the leadership aspect and just really evaluating the impact you can have being an administrator rather than your classroom. Because I had autonomy over my students, 25, 30 students. But the autonomy and the power you had to go and create real change in a broader scale for a school or a school district was very impactful for me. I was like, wow, this is like amazing. Like, interviewing and, development, curriculum development, looking at the data from a school-wide lens rather than just your classroom was kind of impactful. So I was just like, okay. So then I wanted to be an administrator. So then I ended up being coming back to Pennsylvania where I was residing. And first administrative job was a supervisor of special education for autistic support. In Pennsylvania, you kind of can compartmentalize for intermediate units. In Pennsylvania, they're service providers. So they work with school districts to provide support, still affiliated with the public sector. So, the IU, I worked in Colonial Intermediate Unit, and it was a supervisor of special education. So I had over 300 students in autistic support classrooms. So it was about approximately 40 classrooms at the tail end, and they were in schools. So you had children with severe, non-vocal, verbal behavior and limited vocal repertoires, but they were in schools. So I think I had 27 schools that they were in. So I was driving around through 2 different counties to support them. And it was a great experience. I mean, it was fast and furious, but it was probably the best 4 years as far as getting to special education in Pennsylvania, because I was in Jersey for 10 years. So get reacclimated to like Pennsylvania laws, because state laws, can vary.
Correct.
And then from there, after the 4 years, I went to get a job as a principal at the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, where I was a principal there for emotional support. And there it was fantastic because, it was challenging the first year because the building was under renovation. A lot of restraints. We were restraining kids all day. It was intense for the first 2-3 months.
No mindset training, brother.
I'm sorry?
I said no mindset training, man.
Man, it was a lot more. It was a lot of training. For when I was in Montgomery County, I was there for 4 years, from 19, then it hit COVID, and then until last year, but it was intense. So the first year we had like 20 kids in the school, but it was like over 100 plus restraints.
So I want to ask you something real quick, not to cut you off.
Sure.
I kind of had a similar thing where I went to school for law enforcement, went to school to John Jay. You said you wanted to be a detective. So what was that moment like where, you wanted to be a detective and you like, I want to do something different. I'm going to do something different. Like, that's what I wanted to do. But like, what was that moment like for you?
You mean for me not to be like, just
To be like, I don't want to do law enforcement anymore. That's what I wanted to do, and I'm going to jump into this.
Good question. I was in school and college, and I worked in the pool, swimming pool, and then I was talking to one of the law enforcement officers, and he informed me that he's like, you're not just going to go to school and graduate to be a detective. You got to be a beat cop. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So we live in Allentown. It's a small little city.
Love it.
Yeah.
My wife's from Allentown. Hold on. My wife's from Allentown, Airport Road. Bro, I met the wonderful woman. Allentown, great small city, AB Airport.
That's right. And I was watching, obviously kids, and the kids were in the streets wild, in the pool wild. And he was just like, you're going to be doing this for like 2 to 11 years. He says, you have to be a beat cop. And I was just like, do I really want to be chasing these kids, like, in the streets all day? Or, I was like, nah. So when I came back in, I was like, okay, probably it makes more sense to, probably work with the students in a school, much more support, it's proactive, you can engage with them, and it's worked out. So like kind of that was the moment. Because it was challenging. I was like, nah, I like the law enforcement route. I mean, that's what I'm almost about to graduate. I really don't want to like take more classes and credits. But it made a lot of sense after that conversation, plus talking to the law enforcement officer saying it's not as, you have to be a B cop. So, but to circle back to the Montgomery County School real quickly, I did that for 4 years. We did a restraint reduction initiative where we wanted to really reduce restraints because no one's having fun. The children or the staff restraining all day. No one's learning. People getting tired of getting hurt. So we implemented intensive, like the behavioral principles, and in regards to token economy system, staff training, schedules of reinforcement. Like we did intensive staff training, and you saw a significant reduction when people and guests were coming over to our school. They didn't even recognize, like they thought it was like a gen ed school. because and we get like the most challenging. So let me just tell you how IU works. When an intermediate unit, if you have a center-based alternative school, you're getting the most challenging students from schools across multiple districts. You're not getting just one school. You're getting everybody from, so you get some Philadelphia kids, Chester, you get Norristown. You're getting the most challenging students. So that's the kind of population we were serving. But with a lot of work, a lot of training, a lot of support, I mean, we kind of revolutionized the way a school can run elementary emotional support. Even went to this point where the state of Pennsylvania replicated what we did and now servicing students across the state came from our school. So kudos to that, yeah. So now it was my first year, just completed my first year. I got an offer for Chester County. It's a bigger school, approximately 400 students, all exceptionalities from kindergarten to 21, autism, intellectual disability, emotional disturbance. So every population, special education.
One of those 13 classifications, bro.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So we have them all. So that's where I'm at right now. So
nice. You spoke about, man, what a journey, by the way. You've been around the East Coast, man. You spoke about replicating the model that you had at your previous position.
Yes.
And what you've been able to do it now.
Yes.
What are some of those challenges that you face going from one environment to the next that you've experienced so far with where you're at?
Reestablishing this system. When you're going to a system that you have established for 4 years, go into a new building with more students, and trying to replicate that because you're trying to create a culture where everyone and everybody is going to kind of replicate and follow through. However, you have different exceptionalities, right? So certain things that I can do for emotional support students or learning support students, you can't really do for children with severe, autism because it's not going to, like, for example, like self-monitoring checklists or self-management. Students, if you don't have the verbal or vocal repertoire to engage in self-echoics or you don't have the intraverbal skills, you're not going to be able to access or benefit from a certain intervention. So you got to make sure like you have the learners and the skills. Very important, like skill acquisition, understanding skill sequencing to make sure you're providing the proper interventions. You're not going to have goals for communication or speaking, if a child doesn't need it, or you need certain goals that if a student has, limited functional communication skills, you implement certain goals. So just being aware of that.
So you brought up restraints, right?
Yes.
I think that's a topic that's controversial in a lot of spaces. So what is your opinion on restraints as it relates to the field?
For any crisis management program, it's all based on, last resort, right? So you have many programs, they have a verbal de-escalation component. So that's, you want to verbally de-escalate when it gets to that level. For me personally, obviously no one likes to do restraints. No one wants to wrangle with children all day. However, it's needed. If you have certain students who engage in severe maladaptive behaviors, physical aggression, self-injurious behaviors, elopement out of a building, there's certain behaviors that requires a restraint. So again, no one loves it, but however, it's going to be needed. The biggest thing is just making sure that depending on the tiered level system of or the level of intensity or the magnitude of the child's behavior, are these things that we can avoid through proactive strategies? You may have to inadvertently reinforce problem behaviors to kind of trying to evade a restraint temporarily. So again, I don't really.
I think that there's a thing, right, where restraints are needed sometimes, but companies don't want to take on the liability, and they put the RBT, BCBA, group home person in a risk because, they may be hands off, but you may have a severe behavior. So what would you say to those people who are, working with kids who are aggressive and doing certain stuff, and the company's like, hey, don't touch them?
My question is, what's more of a risk, restraining a child that you should have a certified crisis program, or not do anything and run the risk of the child running to the street or hurting someone badly? So you gotta look at like the cost benefit, like what's more of a liability. Yeah. The more the liability is for our students, if you're running out of the building to a street, that's a huge liability, right? Yeah. If you're allowing a child to bang their head for an extensive amount of time, which can cause trauma to the brain, that's a liability. So you're going to have to go into a physical management. It's a real thing. I mean, we can't avoid that conversation. there are children and individuals with severe behaviors, and they have to be, managed. But again, the goal is to provide thorough evidence-based interventions to reduce these, maladaptive behaviors.
That is a great question that you asked. And my last question I had for you on this, Brother Bruce, is can you talk to our audience a little bit about the staff training that goes into and the ethical decisions making process that goes into everything that you just described?
When you talk, obviously, in regards to restraints, whatever crisis management program you have, they have guidelines and they have certain criteria that we have to follow, and it's not going to be specifically based on, the ABA. However, they still have guidelines that you have to follow from an ethical aspect. But when we talk about staff training, making sure that, number one, there is a comprehensive conversation about the type of students you're serving, what we're going to be dealing with, and how to handle it. Okay, using evidence-based practices and interventions to walk them through that. So we're talking about staff training. Again, whatever crisis management plan they have, you're following that. But also, more important thing is when you're talking about staff training, it's not just about like the crisis management program. That's, for the most part, can be reactive. A lot of these crises, I think, is reactive, right? It's verbal de-escalation. So the child's already escalated. And then also to the restraints. So although they're very important, it's technically reactive for the most part. You want to train staff on proactive intervention. So you're looking at, in the classroom, what can we do? So you're looking at schedules of reinforcement. How are you reinforcing the child? Identifying functions of problem behavior. Looking at, even from a tier 1 practice, irregardless if you have children with autism or non-vocal, like you can still have a classroom management practice that's kind of like sound and fundamentally as far as what that are based on the principles of applied behavioral analysis to really focus on classroom management. What can we do proactively to ensure? So staff training can be like, depending on the child, the learner, you're looking at specifically classroom procedures to really reduce problem behavior. Because it's the three things. When you work with a child, three things. First thing is making problem behaviors, less preferred, so you want to get an abolition. You want to evoke positive responses where you don't want to make problem behaviors valuable or motivating. Teach the replacement behavior immediately, and place problem behavior on extinction. Those are the three things you got to do for every single student, every single classroom problem behaviors, and create a classroom system-wide that students are contacting reinforcement frequently and often. Understand, and this is very important. Like I said this multiple times already, understanding schedules of reinforcement. When students contact reinforcement, understand if it's problematic and it's pretty intense. How frequently are we reinforcing, our behaviors that we like, and when to thin the schedule of reinforcement too. So like those are really critical things that we have to understand. And I think once staff has the better understanding of when you're working in a classroom with multiple students with multiple needs, understanding that, because it's very complex, like I said, and I, respect folks who work in a clinic, who work with children, but it's totally different when you're dealing with multiple students in a classroom trying to teach particular content or different content, different things, or different tasks or different targets. When you're one teacher trying to teach multiple students, a lot of things going on, a lot of moving things going on. So that's why your staff has to be keen on your classroom procedures, as also the individuals in there to ensuring that they're really.
So I'm jumping in here, man, because I was a 15-year educator down here in the South, man, and I made the transition too from classroom teacher, LEA, to BCBA, and that's a hard transition.
Yeah,
but when I was in education, we didn't have these principles. Like, we didn't talk about these things. You know what I'm saying? So on the kids' IEPs meetings, talk to that and talk to what our viewers, and especially what our parents, need to know about some of these things, about the restraints, about some of these things that need to be included in the different sections of the IEP, the accommodations, the modifications, the student supports. Talk about like what can help our kiddos.
Right. Well, I can tell you right now, even now, a lot of the principles of applied behavioral analysis are not in IEPs.
No.
Okay, I can tell you
that's
that right now.
my biggest problem.
Yeah,
like, that's
2024, it's still not in there. So we got to do a better job of really, the long-term goal. I would love to work to which will never most likely be very challenging. But I would love the IDEA, which is the federal government, the Individual Disability Education Act, which is the federal guidelines and laws, to make it mandatory to have behavior analysts at the table.
Absolutely.
Okay, because there's certain positions like school psychologist for evaluation of the child find. You need your special education teacher. You need a gen ed teacher. You need your LEA school representative and the parents. You got to make it. If we're talking about problem behaviors, 'cause a lot of litigations are dealing with that, why not have the most important position, a behavior analyst, at the table? So it should be a federal mandate that every state has, that every district has that. Go ahead.
So down here, school districts are just coming into that.
I know that.
So APS just kind of hired BCBAs over the last few years, but you get these rural counties that some of them that I serve, like there's not a BCBA. So we have, I run into, many issues, bro. I've been on IEP meetings with lawyers and where I've got to discuss this and that. And, something simple as just a correct FBA is just not even included. So, man.
And that's why a child's struggling.
Yes. And I really want to talk to our parents and talk to our viewers. Like parents need to be more involved. Yeah. And talk to that point, the involvement of the parent on those IEP meetings.
Absolutely. It's very critical. And I've worked for 20 plus years with parents. It's very critical that parents just aware. And it's hard because, it's hard for parents because, when they're younger, they're going to school and maybe their child got identified, maybe first, second grade. So it's a daunting process, but I just challenge every parent to please be involved in your IEP, your child's IEP, and be aware of it, ask questions. Also, too, for advocacy, parents can get advocates. They don't cost anything. They're free. Yep. No, all right. Yes. They're not designed to charge. So if you have questions, the first thing I would always say is this for collaboration is ask questions. The parents should be reaching out to the teachers. If they're not getting answers from the teachers, then reach out and hold an IEP meeting with the principals, your LEA representatives. Start off with having a positive communication dialogue. If that doesn't work, then obviously you have the rights of parent to go and get an advocate to get more information. So that's within your rights as a parent. And there is parents during every IEP meeting. There's like an extensive paper they get during every annual IEP meeting, all the parent rights. A lot of parents are not going to read that because it's like a dissertation, right? So, but they have a lot of rights. So just get with people who can just summarize some of your rights, and just you don't need to read everything, just the ones that matter for maybe the particular content that you're looking for. But I would highly recommend to get involved because honestly, as a principal, it's the best thing for us too because there's dialogue. I don't want to have to chase anybody to hold an IEP meeting. Yes. I want you to be involved. I want you to be involved. Contact us, call us, ask questions. We'll answer if your feedback's important. I always say, parents, you're your child's first teacher. Okay, it is. It's not Mr. and Mrs. It's mom. Brother, say that again. You are your child's first teacher, right? Fresh out the womb, when you're talking to them, when you're making eye contact, when you're playing with them, you're teaching them. That's all learning. Stay involved, and when they go to schools, if they have an IEP, you have to stay involved, stay active, communicate, engage as best you can. We know a lot of parents have challenges in regards to maybe work or maybe other things. And we're definitely sensitive to that, but I would highly recommend just stay involved and stay active.
Yes. And parents, that does mean that we don't have to wait till the annual review every year. We can have addendum meetings if you feel like something changes or like you feel like your child is not being served correctly. You can call an addendum meeting at any point in time. Because I run into that so much, from my transition from being a teacher to being a BCBA and being in these meetings. I'm telling parents, well, you've got these rights. I know you get a 21-page packet, but you have the right to do this. Our viewers need to know this, like our parents aren't aware. Yeah, but I will add one more thing too. Yeah. We, as educators, we can do a better job too communicating better with parents. Don't just wait to the annual IEP meeting to let children know, their child know that they're struggling. Like, have communication systems put in place. And this is why data is very important. Because when you have data, you have data points. If you see the data points dipping, that's when you can say, okay, what interventions can we do? Revise the IEP, let the parents know, and then you place that intervention in to help support them. So we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. He just gave us some gems there, man. For those of you guys who are listening to this audio and aren't able to see this sharp brother right here talk, man, y'all are missing out. Y'all are definitely missing out. So I appreciate you providing all that insight to us. We're making history right now, fellas. Yes. We got this podcast that we're doing. We got our first guest here, and I'm just enjoying this conversation, this dialogue. I want to shift gears a little bit here, and I want to talk a little bit about BMBA. Black Men in Behavior Analysis. Our mission is to amplify, support, the voices of Black men working in the field of behavior analysis. You're very much involved in the group. He's our vice president. I just want you to speak to. So for those of you guys who know, we're BCBAs are 1% of the entire field of applied behavior analysis. We are 1% of the entire field.
And that's black men too,
Black
right?
men.
Black men,
yes.
It's technically 0.9, but we said we round it up.
Yes.
I'll
repeat it for our audience.
It's less 1%.
Yes, we are less than, black male BCBAs are less than 1% right there, of the field of ABA. Talk to us about, first of all, I want to know just about your journey, as an administrator, as a black man, any, challenges that you face just in that department, if any, and talk to us about your involvement in BMBA, your motivation to get in the group, and kind of talk to our listeners about some things that we have going on right now with BMBA.
All right, before we go any further, I want to say this is what y'all brothers are doing here in the platform is amazing. I love it. This is revolutionary. No platform or podcast platform has a live session. This is beautiful. So excellent. Shout out to you brothers. Before I go any further, I want to just say for Brother Jerron, it's my brother right here. It's an amazing man. We met actually a couple of years ago at an event down in Detroit for Baba. Actually, there wasn't really much men there. So
the story.
I was, again, I was actually shocked to see a couple of brothers there, but the majority were women and like 2 or 3 men. I think he was one of them. So afterwards, we didn't really connect because I presented there. Adrian Bradley, she linked us up. She goes, "Hey, I got a brother over here named, Jerron. He wants to shout out. He wants to have a conversation in regards to some ideas he has." So we got together a month or 2 later. And he kind of shared his vision of what he wanted with this and BMBA. And I was like, wow, this is powerful. So, I jumped on quick when I found that out, that he wants to do something like this for black men because it's a need. It's a dire need. Again, I live outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the 5th largest state in the United States of America, 13 million people. Philadelphia is the 6th largest city in America. And I ain't see one black BCBA.
Yeah.
Black, one. To me, I think it's very important that, we have this platform, we have this organization, this body to really represent folks because we need it. We need it for us, we need it for our people, and we just need it for our community. So I think it's fantastic. So what motivated me was the opportunity. We have an opportunity to do something historic to really highlight and really support men of color, black men in this field. Because we're less than 1%. There's 64,000 BCBAs, so, we're less than 1% of that in the world. So I think that's the motivation for myself to continue to just partner with these brothers out here and go out there and just continue to push the work and move the work forward and really kind of enhance our community, kind of enhance what we do professionally to really support ourselves. Because I think the biggest thing is this. I think for black men, we don't need to go with the historical context of what's within our community, but this is an opportunity to be responsible and make decisions for us in our own community, and not wait for anybody else. No other race, no other culture. It's just us, and we can just take responsibility and ownership what we can do to enhance what we do to support us, our families, and our community.
Absolutely, and I know Darius probably wants to hop in here, but I want to just piggyback off that story. Shout out to Adrian Bradley for connecting us.
She the bomb.
She was a speaker last night at the conference, and she did an amazing job.
Now she's coming on the podcast.
Adrian, get on the podcast.
Yeah, she got to.
I just want to talk a little bit about some key initiatives that we have going on with BMBA. And by the way, we have a conference coming up September 7th, and this guy's keynoting the conference. It's going to be a virtual conference, so this guy's keynoting. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. But yeah, we're just organization. I think we're just growing. We're gaining momentum with what we're doing. So for those of you guys listening, you guys can get involved, become a member. We have a lot of things that we're doing. We have a mentorship group. We have a study group. We have meetups. We're all over the place right now, right?
It is cutting edge. So listen, this brother over here and these brothers are here with the ABA verses.
Oh, man.
I mean, again, the innovate. This is what
What
I
is
love.
ABA versus, guys?
I'm gonna let this brother tell him. But I'm just so proud of the innovation, like the intelligence of these brothers, and the innovation is just unbelievable. And I love it because obviously, we know the historical context of how we were viewed as brothers and our intelligence back historically, but just the innovation, the creativity, the business mindset is just beautiful to watch live, and I love it. So once you work on ABA versus brothers, tell them what it was,
ABA versus, we're bringing a lot of fun into the field of ABA. So we're basically an organization that curates dynamic events in the field of ABA, both virtual and in person. Last night we did an event for Weeba. Shout out to Weeba again. Weeba, it was amazing. We had what we call a drop the mic speaker, which is like a mini keynote. We had some verbal precision, which is like some filling the lyrics stuff. We had some movie recall. It was just amazing just to see it. We had some music. We call it a block party. And we're going to be going around the states now, going city to city, doing some networking, some mixers. So y'all guys shout out to ABA Versus. Be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, it's an event that you've never seen before.
Not an ABA field. We have never seen it before.
Amazing.
It's amazing. So, yes, we're having a mixer the day before the conference, September 6th, here in Atlanta.
There we go.
So if you're in Atlanta, if you want to fly down, come hang out with us. Come. So I want to quickly get back to the impact of BMBA in the field of ABA. Darius was talking last episode, and he said, Joe, that you were the first Black man he met in this field.
Yeah.
And then I was potentially the second. Yeah. And, when we had our first meetup, I just want our listeners to hear this and really feel this for a second. Because it's very relatable. You don't meet a lot of Black men in this field. And I think one thing that we're doing is we're connecting those dots to be able to bring those men together to form a community, and what Darius called on the last episode, brotherhood.
Yeah.
This is really a brotherhood of what we're forming and creating. And I think it's super impactful. And I think really knowing and seeing that live here now, like I still get it's goosebumps like seeing us here together right now. So shout out to everything that all you brothers are doing as well. And I appreciate you guys being on this journey with me. So there's anything you want to say to piggyback off on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is deep, man. We here, that's probably gonna be one of our little quotes, our sayings, but we working, and even to be here where, we have an amazing first guest, the game that you're giving, the conversation, and we just beginning, but this is super important, man, because from the IEPs to people need to hear this stuff, and it's so much information that people just don't have, people already dealing with. You have a child with autism and the everyday struggles of what may come with that. So now try to understand the school systems. Now try to understand how ABA works. Now trying to get help and you on a 2-year wait list to get your kid into a clinic or to hopefully find your child a therapist. So, this is a brotherhood, but it's also, a community in the same, aspects. So yeah, man, that's how I feel,
Absolutely, brother. It is. And I just want to elaborate on that too. So we have 3 BCBAs here, and then I love that we get the perspective of the business owner and the RBT here too.
Dope.
We gotta have a space for that too, because RBTs have a lot to say too. All right,
so and even to piggyback off of that, man, the way I tell everybody is like, as far as RBT and BCBA go, it's kind of like coach and player, and the player can't win without the coach, and the coach can't win without the player.
Say that again, bro.
It's coach and player, and that's a very important aspect of it because, when you become a BCBA, you're put in a coach position, you're put in a supervisor position. It's a lot of people who are educated and book smart, but they're not coaches, so they able to, get their hours and take that exam, but now you also got to be a coach. And, I have a company, even on my interviews, that's something I ask that's very important to me. Like, how do you feel about, BCBAs? Because there has to be a certain level of respect, in the sense of that, like, on both ends, that I need you and you need me, because there is a feeling sometimes, right, as the RBT, like, dang, I'm on the ground for 30 hours a week, and you want to come in for once a week, and you the coach, and even in any sport, right? Like, the coach is not the quarterback. He not in the game getting hit. you know. So I feel like that's an important thing to understand, that as the RBT, you know, you the player and you got to respect your coach, kind of thing.
And I'm gonna jump in on something else, man. I just want to say, brothers out there, there's many different ways. You don't necessarily have to come from the clinic. You don't necessarily have to do an agency. There's a lot of dope male teachers. There's a lot of dope teachers. There's a lot of people that work in group homes that can become BCBAs. There's a lot of people that work in hospitals that can become BCBAs. There's a lot of people that work on in the police academy that can become BCBAs. So our network, we're just so isolated. A lot of people just don't know. Like, I didn't hear about this until 2016, and I'm a teacher. I'm in the schools. So, you know, that 1% can easily be 5% if we get this out of there and we show people that you can come from many different avenues to become a BCBA, because it's the science of just changing behavior, and that applies to many facets of our life.
Wow.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said on that. Absolutely. And honestly, for that, going back to piggyback what you're saying, Big Coop, is like the fields you just referenced, they need that knowledge the most, the skill set the most. The police department, in the schools, in the group homes, in the residential facilities. That's where it's really needed. Because, you know, those are at times can be very challenging environments. So, again, what better practitioner to go in there to make the change than the BCBA?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that about the police academy. I was talking to Bobby Rogers. Shout out to Bobby Rogers from Proud Moments, ABA. And she was talking about how she went in and had a conversation with a police officer, and it was just some great dialogue, just kind of educated him on like kind of what it is and how it is, what we do, first responding. So I think that's the topic of conversation that we can talk about definitely more. And Coop, I appreciate you sharing that perspective too. We need to dive deeper into that on an episode of, particularly from the RBT perspective, because I think it's important. I wanted to ask you a question before I got back to Bruce. Could you talk a little bit about, first of all, have all your supervisors been black men in the field?
Only one.
Only one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Joe. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you have friends or people that you conversate with, and it's okay if you don't, but I want to ask this question and pose it to you, that maybe don't have that and cannot reference or speak to having somebody that's like-minded or looks like them as a supervisor?
I want to say like yes and no, in the sense of that, you know, we've been tight for a while, and I've been a part of BMBA, and I've kind of been putting everybody on to BMBA as far as just if not even a group necessarily, that is a community. So a lot of people, men and women, you know. So I would say that yes, in the sense of that we kind of all go through the same things, where like there's a disconnect sometimes where the owners of these companies are in other states. You know, they're not essentially African American, you know. And I feel like they just don't, we communicate differently amongst each other, you know. And I feel like sometimes that lacks, you know, between cultures. So that is something that I've heard, you know, where we're just voicing opinions and change and certain stuff, and it's kind of a thing where it's like, hey, we making money and we in another state, we ain't really trying to do all that, you know. And I felt like that was something that, you know, myself, I know Joe, we were very serious when we started these companies, in the sense of like, yo, we got to build a community more. Like, we got to build a culture more. And like, there's too much disconnect in the sense of that, like, these big companies are coming in and, you know, they're buying these companies out, and they're not really caring about these kids graduating out and your employees being happy. And, you know, that is something I've heard a lot. And hopefully we can kind of change that a little bit, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say to that too, it could potentially be a barrier too of having that, you know, and those cultural nuances. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. I'm just standing here right now, by the way, since we got Bruce in studio. After this, we might have to do a little 2-on-2 before we take Bruce to the airport on the basketball court.
We can do that, man.
We got some hoopers here right now.
We undefeated.
We undefeated with that 2-on-2 matchup.
You know what I'm saying?
Bruce, I don't know. Bruce may need to take a little elbow right here. He look good.
We ain't losing today.
Shout out to Shaq and TNT, but this is gonna be straight barbecue chicken. Barbecue chicken, bro. It don't matter who.
Can you handle the rock?
All I need is the ball.
Can you handle? Oh man,
All I need is the ball.
Okay, that's the second one. I'm gonna say pause now. You know what I'm saying? My man from New York, you had a pause moment earlier. I ain't saying. Joe, you looked at me. I
did look at that guy.
Yo, when we get one episode, you know what I'm saying? I was just like, just say that.
Oh wow. Oh wow! So I want to talk to our listeners. Actually, this one will go to you, Bruce. Talk about any future GULA projects you have going on. Just kind of what you're doing in PA and what you have going on, and then any advice for any aspiring professionals. They either want to become BCBAs or just want to get into this field. Twofold question.
Just in regards to what I do as a principal, we kind of revamped our MTSS framework, our multi-tiered, system for support system in our school, kind of revised that and make it a little bit more intensive for our school because our school has unique needs, like I alluded to earlier, and it really has a focus on certain aspects to really get behavior moving. Because last year was kind of challenging. I mean, again, it's new, a lot of systems put in place, but a lot of systems weren't kind of communicating with each other and turnover with staff. So kind of reestablishing that. So it's a pretty awesome, thing we're doing right now. We're really trying to beef up a lot of our reinforcement systems and using technology as well to really help that out. So we're excited. A lot of staff is excited for what's to come in the next couple of years. Our facility at the Chester County Intermediate Unit, we are expanding. We are building a couple of brand new schools and facilities for all their alternative schools, but they're kind of like brand new facilities. The need's there. So it's not like, school district requesting it. So we're really trying to provide a support for them, which I think is pretty awesome. So wonderful opportunity for the agencies to really help students out with who needs level of support. In regards to any kind of advice I can give for aspiring behavior analysts, I'd highly recommend that if you aspire to be a behavior analyst, find a wonderful supervisor who is going to be very kind of hands-on, communicates with you, very ethical, obviously, has integrity, and just really can guide you. And not only from a supervision aspect, but from a mentor aspect as well, too. Because there is a difference between supervision and mentorship. All right, so I'm actually in the Applied Behavioral Analysis Autism Handbook. I have a chapter coming out in regards to the difference between supervision and mentorship.
Oh, amazing.
As well as that. So
when's that dropping?
Probably December of 2024, January 2025. So I'll make sure, talk about it. But because there is a difference. So again, supervision is this contractual agreement that we have to just provide support. And once that supervision's over, you're done, or maybe you need supervision. But the mentorship is, long and life lasting. Yes. I can talk to you about other issues from my life, from an ethical standpoint, that you can provide guidance in, for that relationship you have too. So I'd recommend that. And if for anything in education, if you want to be a teacher or an administrator, just again, put yourself around good people. Find some good people that you see particular behaviors that, again, are ethical, that are leading to guiding to being positive and making change. And that's who you link up with and making sure you follow that. So.
Absolutely. We're going to drop we don't have a link for that book yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Also, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out to the public now. Me and Bruce are writing a book together currently.
That's right.
So we're going to have some pre-orders coming out soon. Yeah. We got to get that one wrapped up.
Yeah.
That's good to know. My last question I have for you on this topic right now is, can you talk to us about just your personal vision for education and just for future reference for education and ABA? So just your vision for the future. What would you like to see and what would you want it to look like?
It would be a full merger between the public or even private, any kind of the education system and applied behavioral analysis. When I say a merger, the principles of applied behavioral analysis and behavior analysts needs to be embedded in your school. And you shouldn't be able to operate a school. You cannot operate a school without an administrator. You cannot operate a school with teachers or gen ed teacher and a special education teacher and a school psychologist. Those are those are positions that by law have to be present because you have to evaluate. That's law. That's federal law. That the psychologist is part of the team. But again, which I alluded to earlier, a behavior analyst, and they have to be embedded in your school. So they have to be part of your data team. They have to be a part of the instructional curriculum and instruction. You have to be a part of the behavioral intervention. It has to be fully integrated. And we got to not be afraid to use the word evidence-based and just use applied behavioral analysis. Because I think, politics, people are scared to use ABA because of obviously the historical context, or just, certain groups don't like the word ABA. No, it's a science, and it's proven, and it's validated, and it's evidence-based. So we can say it. But if you want to call it evidence-based, it's fine. But you're using the principle of applied behavioral analysis, ingratiated into schools, and every faction of the schools, again, curriculum, special education, security, law enforcement, everything has to be embedded. If you're looking at programming, instruction has to be at the table. You got to have behavior analysts, whether it could be clinical directors, behavior analysts, should be at the table having a conversation. You shouldn't have that conversation with the behavior analyst. So that's the vision. That's my lifelong goal. So if I can get that, at least by the time I give it up, at least one district, but I would love it at a state level, at least at state level. Federal is going to be almost impossible because technically.
I was just going to ask you that.
It's impossible.
Can you revise the IDA Act?
Well, that's my goal. That's the goal. I mean, you're talking about federal lawyers. It's going to be a lot. But, because technically, from a federal standpoint, public education is not part of any kind of in the Constitution. Right. The 10th Amendment gives states the rights to go out there and just pretty much have governments over education. So technically, there's no federal of what you have to do, but there's guidelines in regards from a federal level, IDEA, which is, again, is the Individual Disability Education Act for special education. So if you can get to them, that'd be great. But at least at a state level, you can work with some states to see if they can make that mandatory to get that into school districts. That would be great. So,
there's a lot of pushback in regards to school systems and ABA, applied behavioral health, BCBAs, RBTs coming in. So as a principal, what is your opinion in that regard?
Still, in regards to the state of special education, we talked about it. It's challenging right now as far as getting staff. But in regards to RBTs, I think the RBT role is critical, especially at any time now. RBTs, obviously, for many of you who know, if you do not know, obviously, usually RBTs are linked to BCBAs in regards to that. So the RBT role is critical because you're having behavior analysts assigned to an RBT. So the level of support and supervision that you get, you typically don't get that from a teacher and a paraprofessional or a teacher and a PCA. And the teacher, although really may have good classroom management skills and maybe great at instruction, they may not have obviously the training as a behavior analyst. So that connectivity between the behavior analyst and an RBT is paramount.
So why do you think there is so much kind of pushback when it comes to applied behavioral health in school systems?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, because you're billing insurance, so you can get about 40 hours into schools. So I think logistically and financially, that can pose an issue. But I think a lot of times too, there is a disconnectivity in regards to a school district, what they're responsible for, and what the health, what they feel they're responsible for too. And I think that within the finances and as well as just understand the roles.
But I think even with that, with billing insurance, it's a necessity and it's helpful.
It is.
I do think that is a part of it. I do think that, just to be transparent, I feel like there's some school systems that are not moving how they should move, and they don't want the extra eyes on them and having RBTs and BCBAs come in.
I'm going to address that question. Go ahead.
I'm going to step in because, in my own agency, I've dealt with some cases where we had to involve lawyers because of that disconnect between the teacher, the BCBA, the RBT, and the principal, because those teachers and paraprofessionals aren't really trained to deal with those behaviors. Right. And then I have proposed, again, from my background in education, that, hey, we need to figure out how can we close this gap, right? I'm a stakeholder. I'm not trying to go in and change things, but in return, the school system gives me a list of things that the RBTs can and cannot do. And I'm almost like, well, this is basically just saying that we're here. Right. Like we're almost just supporting the kid, in a sense, babysitting, but we're not really addressing the behavior. Correct. Like we're not really addressing the immediate contingencies. We're not really addressing those immediate consequences. We're not even in some cases really addressing the BIP. So speak to that. Speak to all of that, man, as a principal from your background.
All right. So hang with me for a second.
I'm hanging, brother.
Because I'm going to address this issue. Actually, we were at WEBA. Shout out to WEBA, by the way. Yes. Wonderful event. Shout out to the women, to the ladies. Phenomenal. event this week. This week was awesome. Shout out to all of them. The board, Dr. Lundy's fantastic. Dr. Linda LeBlanc,
Yes.
shout out.
Linda, Janet,
Wonderful.
all of them.
All of them, wonderful. A couple of presentations, this week talked a bit about school-based BCBAs, and I sat in them because I want to just hear their perspective. Because I'm in it for over 2 decades, so I know. But I just want to hear other perspectives from different states, what they're going through. And there was a couple of young ladies, they're professors in schools, and they had a conversation. They're and a lot of, I think there's these young ladies, they were from Memphis, Tennessee, and they were talking about their challenges. And another lady from Georgia saying that they don't want BCBAs and RBTs in the school at all.
No.
And it's down here. I mean, it's everywhere, but down south, particularly in the rural areas, it's like a no-no. It's like taboo.
Wait, and I had to cut you off. So, and you were about to make a comment.
Yes.
I think there is a thing, right, of that. I made the comment of some school systems are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't want the extra eyes. Yes. So where's your opinion on that?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Because that is factual. So 10 years is administration. So I worked, again, in a school, in center-based school. I worked with 27 different schools, so understanding how they flow and understanding how it works. So the problem is, to your point, is that, and it's twofold. I think it's just both. The school district's obviously responsible for providing a service for the students, right? The issue is that when agency folks come into the school, okay, they typically, and this is my observations for years, typically what happens is like you have the agency folk come in there and there's never, and this is true for any situation, it's the reason why relationships aren't, communication. There's no communication at all, okay? So what happens is, from my experience, and this is like when I first started my first, my big task was the teachers from my program were in schools were like, you got to get these folks, these agency people out of here because all they're doing is taking pictures, they're sitting in the back, they're recording, sending it to the parents, without them, and like those things are causing friction between that. And I'm like, whoa. So my first year, I'm analyzing all this. So now the parents are involved. I've had parents tell me, or the agency folks tell me that the parents wants me in here to see what's going on because there's no communication from the teacher maybe to the parent. The kids are non-vocal, non-verbal. They can't tell what's going on. Correct. So they feel that there's like this cyclical cycle and this circular cycle of like communication is an issue. So first year on the task was like, okay, I got to like bridge this gap because there is a gap because schools don't want them in there and the parents are fighting schools and getting very litigious. So one of the things we did was I sat and I met with we had one of the folks in our program. His name was Ken Smith. He worked with other providers, from the CMOs in regards to the insurance companies and directors from the private agencies in Pennsylvania. I said, can I sit in these meetings? I know I'm in the public sector and public education, special ed, but you're the clinical. But I got to sit in your meetings because these individuals are overseeing, these providers are overseeing a lot of agencies and paying insurance out. I want to talk to them. So I met with them once a month and talked to them and spoke to them and said, hey, listen, what can we do better? Okay, because your agency, and there's tons of agencies, they're coming down and into the classrooms and there's no communication. There's like, you're dropping these RBTs or these, at the time they were called TSS, therapeutic support staffer. They're coming to classrooms and they're just hanging out there and there's like no continuity. And what can we do? So I met with all the directors of the clinics and we talked about training, supporting. When you're coming in there, what treatment plan are you supposed to be working on? If you're going to be here all day, what are you supposed to be working on? What do we want to work on? How can we collaborate? Can we see your treatment plan? Bring your BCBA or your behavior consultant together. Let's have a conversation. Before you enter the classroom, let's talk it through. At the end of the session, BCBA, BC, or behavior consultant, talk to the teacher and collaborate. That's how you get the collaboration moving, where now school districts are more supportive, saying, okay, if you're collaborating with us and you're not, because the notion is you gotcha. I'm trying to investigate something to ensure I let the parent know so they can come back at the table with their attorneys and say, and that's what's going on. So it's a level of disconnectivity. So I think moving forward, what school districts, what private providers, what the agency folks got to do is this. If they're not letting you in the school, step number one is, right? Because here's the thing. There's 2 ways to do this. And you got to look at it from the consequence aspect. You can tell the parents to advocate to get in there and advocate and bring multiple parents together and just bum rush the school and just say, this is what we're doing. Now, we all know that's a negative reinforcement, right? It's escape maintain. The consequence is this. You want to remove an aversive stimuli, right? Yes. Therefore, it's going to temporarily relieve it, but it's not really building anything, right? You're not. Yeah, it's a resistance. Yeah. What you want to do is you want positive reinforcement because that keeps behavior moving the right way. So what do? BCBAs, we got to do a better job of making ourselves more valuable and explain to them how your work can make everyone's life easier.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I think that's what we got to do.
That second option.
That second option, because here's the deal. Because if I'm an admin, I'm a principal, right? You want to come into school, I'm saying no. But why are you saying no? I mean, we don't have a contract together. So if you're going to provide a service, the insurance bills it. Why? So why not take the free service? Because they feel like, hey, maybe from a legal aspect, we're not doing what we're doing, or maybe you might blow the whistle on some of the things that we're, right. Mm-hmm. So make yourself, when you go to meetings, because you can go to meetings, you can't sit on meetings, right? The parent can bring anyone they want. Mm-hmm. Right. Parents, invite your behavior analyst, RBT, come to the meeting and talk.
Advocate for our science.
In a positive way. Yes. Talk about data. Talk about this. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No. I want to,
go ahead.
I think that's very important, the part of that. Parents can bring anybody they want to meetings. I wasn't even aware of that personally. Yes. You know, I have an ABA company. I know my BCBAs can go. Okay. You know, I just want to say that from what you're saying, right, it sounds like a connection can be made, right? Yes. But I think that it comes back to the point I was making earlier of that it is billing, this is medical, and there's a lot of companies that don't care to make that connection. And, you know, I think that, like, it's rough. And we have to fix that because, like, at the end of the day, it's about these children, you know?
It is, 100%. But let me just tell you from a special education legal aspect. Legally, irregardless if it's a medical necessity or not, legally, the school district's responsible to provide that service.
Correct.
So they don't have to bring in an RBT or BCBA. Yes. That's factual. Yes. That's just law. Yes. However, behavior analysts and directors of clinics, the private sector, we have to find a way to collaborate with the school districts to, like, you got to make pair yourself as the reinforcer and make yourself available and establish an MO. Why do you need me in your school?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we got. And I think we lack that. And I do think companies, not all, some companies, they don't do that. And I know you're talking with someone who was in it for over a decade, involved in this, working with hundreds of companies over 10 years and working with tons of BCBAs and RBTs. That's something that lacks. You come in there, it happens. It happens all the time. It happened recently. There's not a connectivity. You come in there as a behavior analyst. Don't come in there adversarial with friction. Come in there as a problem solver and a collaborator. People love collaboration. Yeah. My job's already stressful.
Yes.
Don't come in here and tell me what I'm doing wrong and you tell the parents I'm doing wrong and you whistleblowing on me.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yes. So
I can pop in.
Yeah, go ahead, pop in.
And when I come into IEP meetings, that's what I tell all the BCBAs and RBTs. Hey, we have to collaborate. Like, we can't come and tell them what they're doing wrong. We have to just figure out a way in which, like, to make it better for the kid. So then the school system in turn says, well, you know what, Mr. Adams, I kind of like your company. You guys can come back to these IEP meetings. Versus, because most times, and I'm talking from the BCBA side because I was an educator. The school system says, "Hey, well, it's your turn to speak, but we're gonna kind of cut you off on IEP meetings if you get too much on the behavior goals because you're trying to tell me the master criterion that it's not 80% 5 trials of this, that, and the third." Right. So that's the experience that I get, and I always have to say, "Hey, there's a difference between the BCBA. I'm not an IEP advocate because I'm not going to tell you what you're doing wrong. Right. I am trying to assist in creating those student supports, creating those accommodations that are going to benefit the kid."
100%. Yes. But here's the thing. He has one significant advantage you have is that you were an educator. Yes. So, like, that brings cachet to the table. And not saying that behavior analyst, but that does as an educator because there's always this friction between
that's true.
More. Yeah.
That's true. You do bring that perspective. I want to say that as BAs, we aren't trained to have that perspective that you do have. And what Brother Bruce was speaking about, you talked about negative reinforcement, positive. First of all, we have a code of ethics, by the way, to collaborate, but always use reinforcement procedures first. From a behavior analytics standpoint, to your point, there's also been a learning history with these schools. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I used to be in a school system that allowed BCBAs, RBTs in there. They no longer allow us in that school system. Brother Bruce talked about, whistleblowing and coming in and making our life harder. Right. So if you're coming in and you're making their life hard, now they're learning history. And these schools talk, by the way, these administrators, they talk. You've now made yourself aversive, and you made my life harder. Yeah. So we're making people, but not that we shouldn't challenge and collaborate and but if we're making these administrators, if we're making their life, they're not going to want us in there. So I think there needs to be some kind of training on how we should go in there and approach these schools to be able to stay collaborative.
So I always tell people, especially, people who are coming from the school system or to become a BCBA, there's a difference between the IEP service and our ethical code. So what you may see them do might be totally against our ethics, but it's an IEP service. Mm-hmm. So and that starts the conversation. Right. So and that allows, like you said, that cachet, my learning history from being an educator now moving to a BCBA, I'm able to kind of bridge that gap a little bit more. And I think that gap needs to be bridged, especially in places like Georgia, because, and we'll talk about this, Georgia's Medicaid journal changed as of April to where you have to have a school policy. And technically, we're only supposed to be in there for a segmented period of time, and you're only supposed to be working on behaviors and those functionally equivalent replacement behaviors, those FERBs.
That's it.
So, and that's it.
You can't target anything else.
We can't target any skills. You can't target any academics. We can't target anything.
That's a shame.
And that is a shame. That's a shame. I'll let you talk to
that. So I want to ask a quick question. So, as a principal, right, from Gerard's point of that, he was in a school system and then they didn't want them there anymore. Is there a disconnect between, the actual company, right? Because a lot of stuff is relationship based, right? So if the company or somebody comes in and says, hey, this is what we're doing, because at the end of the day, like there's a BCBA, there's an RBT, and then there's the owner. And I feel like a lot of times owners aren't coming in to meet the principal to say, hey, this is why ABA makes sense. We're not going to touch you on certain stuff, but we're going to touch you on this. So how often does that happen? Like, should it happen more, and does it play a factor?
Yes, it doesn't happen. It does not happen enough. And it should happen more because that plays a significant factor. First of all, again, pairing yourself as the reinforcer, right? You want to pair with the person. Like, if you're trying to get into a school.
Give us an example of that, by the way, Bruce. Okay. Give us one example of how we could pair.
Go to a school, call the principal and said, hey, my name is, I am the owner of,
Excellence Noir.
Excellence Noir. I'm going to do a quick plug real quick. ABA services, Excellence Noir, ABA.com.
I was a teacher. Okay. I was an LEA. I spent time, right?
Yeah, I just want to come and meet you because you might see an RBT or my behavior analyst observer student. I just want to meet you and say anything we can do to provide support for you. Here's what we do. We have a couple of your students and clients in your building. I just want to put a face. If you need anything, here's my card. But we are here to provide support. So anything you need, let us know. And then when you place that card there, that child who's struggling, you might get a call from the principal saying, hey, we're struggling. There's an advocate involved, a lawyer. Can you help us out? Absolutely. What do you need? You need more interface time with these leaders because you're in their school, and you don't have to bring you in there. Right. So you got to make sure you do that. But I'm gonna get back to your question about instruction, about Georgia. Okay. Yeah. So there's a and again, this is this is something that's very important. I think. Because I think a science of applied behavioral analysis is the science of learning, but also the science of teaching.
Absolutely.
Okay? It does both. It explains the learning steps and procedures as well as the teaching procedures. Like when you're talking about like language acquisition or in these curriculums for special ed or like the VB math, those are instructional targets. So it shouldn't just be behavior. It's also skill acquisition for language. It's not about just behavior reduction, because it is this dichotomy of this they're like oppositionally opposed to each other when you're going like a dichotomy from like increase of skill acquisition, but also decrease of maladaptive behavior. But that doesn't happen simultaneously. When your language or your academic instruction increases, problem behavior should be decreasing as well. So you should be teaching maladaptive behaviors, but also teaching skill acquisition from whether behavioral skill or even an academic skill as well too. So those things have to be put in place. So you should not restrict behavior analysts just to reduce behaviors, because once the behavior is reduced, all right, I learned to stop hitting my head. What are you replacing it with? And when I'm done stop hitting my head, what am I learning? What am I teaching? What am I learning? So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
reminds me of my wife when she's like, "Well, don't do that." I'm like, "Well, don't. What do you want me to do instead?" I don't know. Just don't do it.
Right. Okay. All right. My hands are ready. My feet are floored.
All right. What do you want me to do?
I establish instructional control. All right. I'm sitting. Okay. What's next?
Yes.
You know.
Yep. That's a perfect point.
Yeah.
Perfect point. Wow, man.
Yeah.
Gems, man. Gems. Amazing.
Yeah, but great questions, brothers. Great questions. Keep doing your thing, in regards to what you're doing and what you're doing. I mean, what you're doing is amazing. And I love that you bring in the perspective from education and the businessman, the business practitioner, and the practitioner from that lens. It is amazing. So
Appreciate
both
it.
all you guys have so much to bring to help support the field clinically, and from an education aspect too. So keep doing your thing.
Yeah,
man.
we appreciate it, man. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio here in Atlanta on the show. For those of you guys who don't know, this is my right-hand man right here. So before we sign off, where can our listeners learn more about you? Where can they find you on social media? Where you at?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I just got an IG. I think he helped me out with my IG account. I was doing LinkedIn, man. My IG's lame. I'm building it up though.
I'm getting it, baby.
I'm getting it. So IG, LinkedIn, you can look me up. Again, cciu.org, and then I have it. My email is brucetinor@gmail.com. Or you can use my work email too. That's all my information is there too. So
absolutely. I want to thank you. I want to thank our listeners again for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Science. Stay tuned for more insightful conversations as we explore the world of ABA. I want you guys to provide us feedback. Put it in the comments. What do you guys want to hear us talk about more? Insights or anything like that?
Well, before we wrap up, right? I know we got to go soon, right? Quickly, could you give that BCBA / principal perspective? I think that's not a very common thing.
It's not.
So, I know we got to go, but what is that like, being a BCBA / principal?
Phenomenal. Amazing. Fire.
I don't need to go back in the education right now.
Because you know why? Because
that's
as a principal, most principals, you have a duty. You're overseeing a school, you're overseeing children, so a lot of it's going to be more management. BCBA, a lot of it is like leadership management, but you're working with one or two or three. When you're the principal, obviously I have my duties from a leadership and management standpoint, coach, but like when now with the BCBA, now it's like coaching and training, So like now you're hitting everything. So, and it's awesome because you see it from a behavior analytic lens, and everything that's being done, I only see it one way. So we try not to leave room for any kind of mentalistic approaches, or circular reasoning, rational reasoning, why, or hypothetical construct. Everything we do has got to be based on scientific evidence in our field, and that's the approach. So the way we talk about students and saying, the reason why he's like that because he has this. No, we got to look at it from a different perspective, and also to the data. Making data-informed decisions, making sure that schedules of reinforcement, I talked about it earlier too, making sure like the staff understands that, classroom management, classroom procedures, school-wide, classroom-wide, individual-wide, from a behavior analytic lens, but I love it.
And it's interesting to me, right? Like, I'm a business guy, being a BCBA can be lucrative, right? So I highly respect the fact of saying, I have my BCBA, but I'm going to be a principal, because you don't need to do that. And I want to say that because like a lot of people who don't know about this field, even as an RBT, you can go get certified and make 20 to 30 an hour, where you don't got to work at a warehouse, you don't got to work at a factory, and I think that a lot of people just don't know about this. Like, I moved here, I didn't even know this was a thing, I was talking about last episode, I kind of fell into it. I became a behavior technician thinking that it was troubled youth, and then I got my certification. So I wanted to say I applaud you in the sense of that, you decided to have the masters, all you guys, I went to college, school just not really my thing, I'm a business guy, but the fact that you decide to say, I'm going to step into a leadership role and I'm going to take on the challenges that come with that as a principal, when you don't need to, is very highly applauded. So
absolutely. Just to add on to the accolades, because you guys don't know, he has a doctorate. And this brother right here is in school right now, obtaining his second doctorate.
Oh my God!
I mean,
Thanks, man.
Cheers to that, man. This guy right here, man.
I ain't got the too much, but that's deep, man. That's deep,
It's a good
man.
moment for the reels, dog. We gotta get we gotta talk
right here,
yeah.
baby.
And we gotta come on back.
Cheers.
Absolutely. Cheers to that, man. Cheers to that.
That's
Absolutely.
deep, man.
Cheers.
That's
Cheers.
deep, man. Because, you know, we do have a stigma as black men that even I feel like we get to a certain level and it's still like, you know. So the fact that we breaking them barriers and we breaking what, you know, most people saying that you are the first person I've met, not black, white, to have a doctorate and still be in school.
That's crazy.
That's not even a race thing. Like, that's deep.
This brother right here, man.
You know,
Anybody who comes to this guy's presence is just, I'm wowed by you from the day that I met you. You're a brother, you're a friend, you're a colleague, you're a mentor. You continue to inspire me, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. So I'm gonna run that last segment really fast so we can do it one more time. All right, I want to thank you, Dr. Tinor, and thank you to all our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Science. Stay tuned for more insightful conversation as we continue to explore the world of ABA beyond the science. I want you guys to give us feedback in the comment section. Let us know if there's any topics you want us to discuss. Give us some feedback on how we're doing out here in our second episode. And until next time, let's keep pushing, fellas. Let's keep breaking boundaries, and let's keep doing our thing out here. So shout out to everybody on this podcast. And until next time, another episode of Beyond the Science.
I got another one.
Hold on. Keep it going, Alex. Keep it going.
Another episode of Beyond the Science.
We gotta finish up with that theme music.